what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Somebody once said that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your whole life. That's all well and good, but it don't necessarily jive with what we've come to know about the life of a barbecue pitmaster. Barbecue business is work. No matter how much you love it, there's no doubt that the people who do it, they love it, that's for sure. But it takes work. How much work? And what is the level of love that's required to stick it out at the fire pit and the chopping block? We'll find out today from a pitmaster who abandoned a career outside the food industry to build his own successful barbecue business. He did it in Garland, North Carolina, a tiny town of about 600 people, just 80 miles due south of Raleigh. I'm Chigger Willard, and today I'm talking with Matthew Register, the pitmaster and operator of Southern Smoke Barbecue Restaurant and Catering. He's going to share some of the stories behind the launch of his barbecue business, the creation of his sauces, and how all that expanded into producing a cookbook. In this episode of the Low and Slow Barbecue Show, Matthew shares his tips for the backyard barbecuers during BBQ 101. He answers my curveball questions in the Low and Slow Challenge, and he shares one of his favorite recipes. Hey, listen up, it's an easy midweek meal for the busy family, as long as your family eats collard greens. You can find that recipe in the Low and Slow blog at our website, lowslowbbqshow.com. That's where you can also access interviews with other Carolina pitmasters, as well as barbecue enthusiasts from all walks of low and slow life. Be sure to look for our first conversation with today's guest. We spoke with him at the Carolina Barbecue Festival at Camp North End. Matthew had such a cool story to tell, we wanted to invite him back for a deeper dive. Welcome back to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show, Matthew.
Hey, man. How are you? It's great to be back.
Yeah, great. We're so excited to connect with you. I guess you're on vacation, right?
Yeah, I have. I've slipped down to the coast of North Carolina for a few days. This time of the year, I kind of, run back and forth between Garland and the beach. It's really nice to be this close and trying to get in as many days as I can with my kids before school starts, and it starts in like 3 weeks. So
Definitely can appreciate that. I know folks in our audience can too. And when we talked before at the Carolina Barbecue Festival at Camp North End, you were kind enough to tell us a little bit of your backstory. But why don't you just remind our audience again, where are you from and how did you get into the business of smoking meat low and slow, kind of from the start?
Yeah, so I'm Matt Register from Southern Smoke in Garland, North Carolina, which is a tiny town about 45 minutes from Fayetteville and about an hour from downtown Wilmington. And we have been in the business for 9 years now, approaching 10 this coming spring. And, it's a weird, long, winding story of how I ended up in the barbecue business. Really started out as a backyard guy, really started teaching myself. And basically, I wanted to know more so I could teach my kids because that's I feel like it's part of our heritage being from Eastern North Carolina. And it really just snowballed into a hobby in the backyard into what became Southern Smoke. It's a very improbable story because we're only open a couple of days a week. We're located in a town of maybe 550, 600 people at most.
Mm-hmm.
But we believed in what we were doing and, we wanted to be able to sell maybe 40, 50 barbecue sandwiches a day. And I had another job and this was kind of supplemental income and wanted to be able to cater a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since we opened the first day, it hasn't slowed down. It's just really, like I tell so many people, we're blessed, but because our story is just so improbable. It really is.
Right. So, kind of walk us a little bit through a little bit of the stages, if you will. You're kind of doing the backyard barbecue stuff, and I know you mentioned in our previous conversations you just kind of started selling stuff a little bit, maybe on the road, out of the
Yeah.
side of the house. And,
Yeah.
according to the website, you guys started officially in 2010, but then
Yep.
the restaurant and the catering didn't really come online until 2014. So, walk us through a little bit through the stages of it, if you would.
Yeah. So it's real funny. The reason we have a restaurant is because the health department told us we had to have a restaurant.
Oh, right.
We People started calling me a lot. Word started getting out that we were doing, really old school barbecue, but in a different way.
Hmm.
And So I decided downtown Garland one Friday, I was like, hey, I'm gonna set my pit up and a pop up tent and try to sell barbecue sandwiches. And
Yeah.
sure enough, but a few days after that, health department called and said, hey, we know you're selling barbecue. You got to get a restaurant or you got to stop. But really, the early origins of Southern Smoke, when we were starting to do barbecue, were our sauces.
Hmm.
I really wanted to find that kind of perfect rib sauce. My wife and kid, or my wife and daughter at the time, my boys weren't born yet. Really loved ribs, and I'll admit this on air that I like ribs, but I don't like messy foods, and
Mm.
that's so weird that I'm a
Barbecue.
rib like I'm a barbecue guy, but I love just barbecue with a little bit of vinegar sauce on it, and then it's fine. But when you get into ribs, like they just get messy, and instead of buying, um, you know, store bought barbecue sauces, I started test batching right there in our kitchen
Yeah.
and really just, and Taylor Grace was the ultimate say in it, So we dumped out pot after pot after pot after pot of, a Memphis style sweet sauce is basically what we were trying to come
Hmm.
up with. And then one day we just hit it, and she's like, Dad, that's it. Like, that's perfect. And so therefore we named that sauce's name Sweet Grace after
Uh-huh.
her. Her name is Taylor Grace. So um and that's really kind of when it started snowballing. I mean, we started going to our first big festival. I'll never forget it, was the Got to Be in Sea Festival. And
Hmm.
we've started doing different things. In fact, in the summertime, I would come to the Carolina Beach farmers market on Saturdays, and we were just selling sauce. And then what I would do is I would cook a little bit of barbecue for people to sample,
Right.
and people were like, "Whoa, wait a minute! Can we get the barbecue too?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess but that both of the barbecue and the sauce kind of started at the same time, but the sauce really is what kind of catapulted us and got in front of people quicker than the barbecue did.
Okay. Hey, you mentioned your family. They, again, I visited your website. Clearly, they've got a big role in your business there. But talk to me about your wife, Jessica. It looks like she's been, pretty heavily involved from the outset. So, how has she been
Yeah,
integral to your business?
well, very early on, Jessica's grandfather played a really big role. They were in the barbecue business in Sanford back in the 40s and 50s. And I really got to pick his brain when I was really starting to go down this path
Hmm.
with, just his philosophy. How should it be served? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And, um, you know, then her uncle built, one of our pits. But Jessica, is unfortunately is not there day to day. And I wish she was, because a
Hmm.
lot of times Jessica's the voice of reason. Um, I am kind of I'm 18 tabs open and can't finish one task before I'm starting on something else.
Yeah.
And but she's the one that is kind of the backbone. I promised her when we got in the restaurant business that it would not run our life.
Mm.
Well, guess what?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there are Saturday nights where I'm working a wedding in Raleigh
Mm-hmm.
or, Richmond, and she's home with the kids, but she's always been a sound my biggest sounding board when I'm working on new things. And I'm blessed to have her. She comes from a family of amazing cooks. Or she's got an Italian and then Southern, and she's probably has one of the best palates I've ever seen. So when I give her stuff, if I'm working on something new and I give it to her and she's like, yeah, that's like really, really good, then I kind of know, hey, this is going to work. But she used to, starting out, she did all of our website, all of our social
Mm.
media and everything. Uh, but with her having another job, like it's turned into this monster. And unfortunately, I've had to teach myself how to like do all this stuff. She still monitors social media because although I am an author, my grammar is not always correct. So I will get phone calls when I post, and she'll say, "Hey, you need to put a comma there, and you need to fix this." So you know,
Wow, grammar
yeah.
check on social posts.
Oh
That's a new
yeah.
level.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Well, so
still struggle with. I
you
still struggle with there, and there.
well, a lot of people do. Don't worry. I can't get its and its right. Apostrophe or
Yeah.
no. I don't know when to use it. And I'm a writer. And so you mentioned a little bit of her or barbecue heritage, and you got your site open. And I'll mention her grandfather Jimmy Nipper was with Dan's Old Fashioned Barbecue in Sanford. And tell me about what it was like to kind of get some of those tips from somebody who kind of was in the business in really sort of an early heyday of Carolina barbecue business and in traditional
Yeah.
barbecue
It's
country.
um. It's pretty incredible. When I started, because he left there and went to work for the Highway Patrol, but still constantly cook barbecue.
Hmm.
And because here, I mean, somebody at church needs a pig,
Yeah.
such and such needs you to cook. Yeah, well, just bring it over here and I'll cook it. And really, when you look at our barbecue, um, it's kind of I go back to things he taught me sitting at his dinner table.
Hmm.
Uh, he passed away before Southern Smoke opened. So that is still one of my biggest things that he never really got to see the restaurant, but right before he died, right around Christmas, I sat up one night late and he wasn't, his health wasn't great. Um, but I sat with a notebook and just wrote,
Mm.
and asked him questions and his philosophies and those kind of things, and it's just that conversation. There's two or three things that ended up, Matt Register ended up in the barbecue business, and that conversation was one of them,
Yeah.
that, hey, this is something that's important, and it's something that not just my kids, but other kids need to understand, and they need to see it.
Yeah.
We live in such a microwave world, where you can go to any fast food place and get barbecue. And I use air quotes like very heavily there.
Yeah.
But I want kids to know that small town, Eastern North Carolina barbecue, and this is what it should taste like, because it's a scary barbecue is a scary time in Eastern North Carolina. When you look at it, um, from if you take Raleigh out of it, when you talk about going east, I mean, me and Sam and maybe and Brandon Shepard are
Mm.
really like the youngest guys. I mean, you're talking about the folks at Grady's, and I mean, they're in their 80s.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine still shoveling coals and still chopping barbecue at 80,
Right.
So
it's a
it is
dying
a
art.
scary,
Yeah.
it is a scary, scary time, in my opinion.
In terms of what could be, coming to an end here without folks like you guys to carry on that along. Well, you mentioned, a lot of the stuff and a lot of the lessons that you learned from him. Have you got maybe a nugget or two that you can share apart from, food doesn't just come from the microwave?
Yeah, no, so one thing that he always said, and a lot of people, I constantly say this: we're chopping barbecue, like we want it to be not a coarse chop, or not a mince chop. I
Mm-hmm.
want to hit it 2 or 3 times, and that's it.
Okay.
That's how his barbecue was.
Yeah.
But also, we lightly sauce our barbecue. I barely want you to taste that vinegar, because what he would say was, you can put it in there, but you can't take it out.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. Like, let people add more if they want it. And I am constantly finding myself, because if you come in our restaurant, I stand right on the corner to cut ribs and talk to customers. And when they ask, I always say, "Hey, taste the barbecue before you douse it in vinegar sauce."
Yeah.
I want you to taste it like I want you to taste it first, and then if you want to put half a bottle of vinegar sauce on it, I don't care. It's your prerogative, but we're going to do it this way, and it's going to be very, very lightly sauced. And that's one of the biggest things. And the way, he cleaned his barbecue really well.
Mm.
I take it to probably a little bit more of an extreme. He would fuss at me probably about a lot of the stuff that gets thrown out and does not make it in our barbecue.
Oh, okay.
Some of the grease in the fat. We want to have a very lean barbecue when we chop.
Okay. Well, another kind of a familial connection. You mentioned, I guess, an uncle helped connect you with it and build a smoker for you, and that must get us down
Yeah.
the road of is it Jezebel? That's the name of the
Yeah,
smoker. Tell us all about
Jezebel.
Jezebel and the role that she plays in Southern Smoke.
Yeah, so Jezebel, Jessica's Uncle Sean, I was starting to really, really get into barbecue, and I was like, man, I want one of these big reverse airflow. It was before like everybody had one.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can go everywhere, and there's some just amazing ones all throughout Texas, and Lang and everything. But I didn't know anything about those guys, so
Yeah.
I kind of sat down with him and sketched out, hey, this is what I want, and you know, um, he, I went and found an old LP tank and carried it to him, and he built everything by hand. But the Jezebel part of it is really funny. There is a blues band from Winston-Salem. I'm really heavy into music, and
Uh-huh.
I never cook without music playing, and love blues music and that kind of funky, like sharp harmonica, like really just Muddy Waters type stuff. And
Yeah.
there's a band, they're not together anymore, called WSMB. We Sing Nasty Blues. And they have a song called Jezebel, and it was about a voodoo woman, that lived down in the bayou, and she was ornery, and that's how Jezebel, one of the guys that started cooking with me very early on, we would always listen to We Sing Nasty Blues and Jezebel when we'd light a fire. And I just, Jezebel's ornery, and sometimes she'll cook perfect, and then sometimes it's like fighting the entire time. So we just gave her that name, but Jezebel's a member of the family. Several years ago, someone stole Jezebel.
Oh no.
Yeah, and luckily we put it on social media, and it was the craziest thing. We had people all the way in Oklahoma like looking for this pit, and luckily, the guy that took it carried it to the junkyard in Sampson County. And when they got it, they started looking around. They're like, "Wait a minute, we know whose pit this is.
Yeah, they
This is Southern
recognized it.
Smoke's pit."
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, "This is Jezebel." And I mean, it was 3 days. I was heartbroken. I mean, heartbroken because this was this is not like a commercial pit that I just went and bought.
Right.
Like I designed it. We built this thing. This is the cornerstone of our restaurant, and it was gone. But
Yeah.
thank goodness now it has a very, very heavy lock and key and everything on it. And now we don't cook we don't cook on every day. I do a lot of my sausage. When it cools off, we cook a lot of sausage and ribs on it. Um, because now we've got other big pits that we have to kind of keep rolling to. Um, but I'm going to Florida to cook in 3 weeks, and Jezebel will be in tow headed to Florida because
On
we
the
got
road.
to
So
carry her with us.
give me the dimensions of the parameters. What can she do? What does she hold? What is the size and the
Oh
burn
my gosh.
capacity?
Yeah, now, when you look at some of the pits now, it's like, dang, it's not that big.
Hmm.
Like we need a bigger pit. But I don't know. I probably can cook $40, something like
Yeah.
that. Probably, I don't know. I think the most ribs, I think we've cooked like 50 racks of ribs on it, 50 or 60. It's not one of these like behemoths like John G has,
Hmm.
or Anthony DiBernardo at Swing and Swine. Like those, just you got to have a Mack truck to like pull it.
Yeah.
It's not one of those. I've toyed with the idea, but I don't know. I think Jezebel would get upset if I brought one more pit into the realm of Southern Smoke right now.
Well, yeah, you thought it's ornery now. Wait till you bring some more competition on
Yeah,
board. Yeah.
no kidding, no
Couldn't handle
kidding.
that. But talk a little bit more about the restaurant, for a moment or two. You're only open a couple of days a week, but and you're going to be there, and there might be a little sauce in the barbecue. Maybe folks can add it if they want. But what is an experience like when they come to the restaurant there at Southern Smoke?
Yeah, so very early on, I decided that there would be no set menu.
Mm,
That's one of the things. We always have barbecue. You always have ribs. You have some type of chicken, but there's no telling what kind of chicken it may be. It may be white chicken. It may be hot honey fried chicken that day. Just kind of whatever notion I take to it. And you got slaw, baked beans, and potato salad, and those are the mainstays. And then everything else is completely out the window. We may have, shrimp po' boys. We may have fish, fish sandwiches. We did this past week. We did like a Nashville hot fish.
mm,
That was really good. We do a lot of soups and stews. It's very seasonal. I don't like using farm to table because I think it gets overdone.
mm.
But it's a lot of seasonal eating. So you'll see, this time of the year, you'll see sweet corn and tomatoes and cucumbers. We'll do a lot of light salads and those kind of things. And then, we do brisket usually once or twice a month, usually from September to May. We do in-house sausage. We kind of go a little Texas on everybody,
Hmm.
and make hot links, and but it's something that I've kind of picked up that I really enjoy. But I really want people to kind of see the love that I have, not just for barbecue, but for cooking in general.
Mm.
I think it's really, soulful. But our place is, if you're expecting the Ritz Carlton and this like pretty plate, we ain't your cup of tea, buddy. Uh, we're going, we've got, outdoor seating. Everything is all outdoor seating, no indoor seating. You'll have a lot of music blaring, and it'll look like controlled chaos. We're really lucky. We open up and have a line, anywhere from 15 to 70 deep when
Yeah.
we open at lunch. But it is the one thing I always say: I never want my food to be pretentious. I want it to be kind of everyman food. And, even if we are doing like a classic French ratatouille, you're still going to get ratatouille in a styrofoam cup or a plastic cup.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be beautifully plated. And, we're going to do shrimp and grits sometimes. And it'll be beautiful, but it's going to be in a plastic container or a styrofoam cup, you know.
Yeah.
We kind of have no boundaries. You never know. I will see people on like a Tuesday and they'll say, "So what are you cooking this week?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure yet. I hadn't." And there may be times where Wednesday night I'm like, let's make gumbo tomorrow. Like gumbo, a lot of times if we're doing our shrimp or our fish, or we have brisket, or we've got like smoked cheeseburgers, we'll post that like a couple of days so people will know. But our sides, if I walk in and say, "Hey, let's do, Creole fried rice like we did last week," that's what we're going to do. And sometimes you'll see me at the Garland Piggly Wiggly at 7 o'clock on a Thursday morning, walking around like, "What are we cooking today?"
Trying to
Trying to
figure it
figure it
out.
out.
What's it going to be?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so why did you decide to go that route instead of having just like the tried and true, and maybe having that on one portion, but then kind of being outside the box with everything else?
I would go crazy.
Uh huh.
I would go crazy. If I had to cook the same thing every day, I would go crazy.
Yeah.
That's one thing I love about, with we have a separate catering division, where we're doing like pretty plate weddings and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
is I love that kind of stuff. I love chopping barbecue for 4 hours. And then all of a sudden we're flipping the switch and we're doing, like onion marmalade with whipped ricotta and like these little delicate bites and stuff at a caterer.
Yeah.
I always love transition, and always doing that always pushes me to come up with new things. And I tell the guys that work with me, I'm like, "Hey, this is really good. Don't let me forget about it, because we'll do something that customers love, and we'll do it for like a month, and then all of a sudden I'll forget about it, and I'll be going back through Instagram, and I'm like, man, we had 300 likes on that, and people loved it, and we
Yeah.
hadn't cooked it in 4 months, So, but it's just fun.
Yeah.
Always the new stuff. Like I get so excited. Last summer, we did this roasted squash and zucchini dish with like this herby ranch dressing on it, but everything was like really, really cold, and it was hot, and it just was like unbelievable. I was
Wow.
just blown away. By like such a simple dish, but it was just incredible because it's perfect for summer. So you'll see it on our menu, at Southern Smoke. But in 6 months, next summer, I'll be forgot about it. It's like shrimp and cornbread salad. We did that for like a summer, and people loved it. And we hadn't done it. I bet we hadn't done it in a year and a half.
People keep asking about it, right?
Yeah,
The
that's
spirit just
right.
hadn't moved yet. Clearly, you've got a lot of passion for food, and it's not just for barbecue, but for food and the traditions of food, and the business and everything that kind of goes into it. And I know that in 2019, you published your first cookbook. They called it, or you called it Southern Smoke Barbecue Traditions and Treasured Recipes Reimagined for Today. So tell me a little bit about how you got down the path of doing the cookbook. Is that just, more the food passion overflowing into another, genre, I guess, or another avenue?
Yeah, and the book really started with one dish. I am a heavy reader, but I also love old cookbooks and
Mm,
really obscure, Southern cookbooks, anything. And I had picked up uh, it was like the Women's Cookery Diary of like 1908 or something. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was just super old and just obscure. And I started reading and found a recipe for rice pudding. Um, and at that time, it was May. So I had a buddy of mine that was a squash farmer. And every day it felt like he'd bring a 5 gallon bucket of squash. And I was like, I don't want any more squash.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing else. I can only make squash casserole and fry squash so much. Like,
Right.
I just can't anymore. And it was just weird that we were cooking just squash, like just stewing them down with onions. And that recipe popped in my head. And I said, let's make a squash and rice pudding, where we put a lot of herbs. It's very like a savory pudding and not a sweet pudding. And so we took all this squash and fresh herbs and garlic and just kind of we cooked the rice like 2 times to get it just the right consistency, and then put the juices from squash. If you've ever cooked squash, you know how the juice,
Mm.
and we mixed it all up, and people lost their minds. Like, it was like I had created, something that had never been done before, that people were like losing their minds over. It
Yeah.
was like the Popeye's chicken sandwich of vegetables dish.
Wait a minute. You mean
And
Bojangles, right? Not Popeyes.
well,
Bojangles.
man, we're not going to get in. We're not going to get into all that,
I'll add
'cause
that to
I'm
the
a
showdown here.
I'm a
Bojangles or
Popeyes
Popeyes?
person. So I carried it to Euphoria Food and Wine in Greenville, South Carolina, and did it as a side dish.
Mhm.
And one of my friends, who's a writer, she tasted it and she was like, I'm writing an article about this. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, it's just kind of like, it's just another side dish.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And it ended up in Food and Wine magazine. And after that, my publisher called me and said, hey, we've read this article. Would you be interested in kind of a barbecue book, but with this deep dive on these obscure Southern recipes that you do in your restaurant and kind of recreating it?
Yeah.
And it was right up my alley, because I mean, there's just so many like cool, funky, small pocket recipes that nobody knows about. Like, one of the summertime favorite things is tomato and saltine cracker salad. Well, that's one that is done in like a really small pocket of Georgia,
Mm.
but nobody had ever heard of.
Yeah.
So we kind of took those, and there's a lot of recipes of my grandmother's in there where, like, she would, we stewed cabbage, and you know, uh, but being the good Baptist woman that she is, she would have never used white wine in her, braising her cabbage down,
Right.
So we really, it was one of those things. I had no clue how to write a book, but my editor was absolutely like unbelievable, and within about a month of him kind of teaching me, hey, this is how you need to write. I just started cranking them out. And one of the proudest things, one of my proudest things about the book is I wrote every word in it, and I never missed a deadline. In fact, my final deadline, I was a week and a half, 2 weeks early.
Wow.
But now I rode around in my car. I'm not a laptop person, so I carried a Mac desktop in the box, drove it all over the place. Wherever I went, I would carry my Mac desktop, and I still, during that time, it was wedding season, which is like hectic anyway. I would write early in the mornings before
Mm.
my kids got up,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would write late at night, when my kids went to bed, because
Mm-hmm.
especially during the summer, I didn't want to lose an entire summer because I'm sitting here trying to write a book.
Yeah.
Right? That's a bad dad move, and it's not fair to my kids. So, some of the late night, especially if I'd been on the beach or on the boat, some of my late night notes that I would send my editor might have looked a little bit like Faulkner at times, with no punctuations and
Yeah.
just writing. But
Stream of conscious. Yeah.
yeah, but I enjoyed it. I fell in love not only with the process, but I fell more in love with Southern food, and just the uniqueness of it, and how things that we look at as traditional Southern food are actually not from the South. They're
Mm.
from Spain, and they're from West Africa, and they're from and the great thing about the South is we're such a melting pot. When you look at anything from okra stew to Delta tamales. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you think about where those two things came from. It's incredible, that, and that's what makes Southern food such a unique, a unique story. It just really is, and it was fun. Am I ready to do it again? I don't know. It is a lot of work. I think if the right project came in front of me, I would definitely probably jump at the chance to write again.
Yeah. So, with the cookbook and you mentioned some of the articles and, some of the press along the way, you started to accumulate a little bit of celebrity, it seems like. How has that affected your business? And you shake your head, but
I'm not a
got a little
celebrity.
bit out there. And if not, you're at least kind of rubbing alongside some celebrities in the barbecue world.
Yeah, I
How
don't
does
know.
that fit into the business?
You know, I still have a hard time understanding that. And I know it's weird to say, Brian Furman is one of the best barbecue guys in America, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And, Brian and I are like best buddies.
Mm.
You look at, Sam Jones is a really good friend of mine. The guys at Home Team, um, Jake Wood, Garen. And I have a hard time still um, realizing that my name is beside those guys. Um, I still look at them as, you know, almost like my barbecue heroes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's crazy, and it's surprising, man. It's hard for me to believe. Uh, I still am surprised when people walk in Garland and say, "Hey, well, we saw you on PBS, or we, read about you in this magazine." And I'm like, "Well, where are you from?" And they'll say, "Charlotte." And I'm like, "You drove all the way from Charlotte to Garland? That's a 3-hour drive."
Yeah.
And uh, the 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 kids that, and I call them kids, most of them are grown, that work for me. They give me, I mean, the devil about it. If we're at, like, Charleston Food and Wine or Euphoria, and somebody walks up and is like, "Hey, can I have my picture taken with you?" And I hear about it for days,
Yeah.
like days. And I mean, it is just constant. And my kids, they laugh about it. My daughter gives me a hard time about it, because if we go anywhere in Eastern North Carolina, automatically, like, I'm gonna see somebody that knows me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just weird. We were at a concert, I guess it was last week, and I'm just there for the concert, and all of a sudden some guy like walks up, puts his arm around me, and she's like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, he's, you know just a barbecue guy." But I don't get it. I mean, Sam Jones and I've had this conversation, like, we're just cooking barbecue, and now it is cool, and
Yeah.
it is extremely humbling, when people do take that drive to eat your food.
Yeah.
Um, and then, they they walk in and say, "Man, that was amazing." Like, that makes the grind worth it.
Mm.
And people think that, it's monetary, like the monetary rewards of this is what we're doing. Nah, it ain't that. Like, yeah, I love being able to support my family and make a living
Mm-hmm.
doing something that's not a job to me. That's, but the comment, and when people, they can have like a soulful connection to your food, man, that's where it's at. Like, that's what's amazing. It
Yeah.
really is. But as my dad and I were talking, and we were actually fishing, um, and he said, "This sure beats work." And I said, "Not really, because I like going to work. Now, do
Yeah.
I like working? When I'm double booked on a Saturday, got a Friday night and a Sunday event, and I only sleep like 6 hours in 3 days? No, I don't. And my knees hurt, and I mean, but like, I get to cook barbecue. Like, I get to wear a t-shirt and a Yeti hat and shorts and tennis shoes to work every day.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to say anything to me about it.
That's hard to beat, but it is still work at the end of the day, no matter how much you love it. And, of course, we met at the Carolina Barbecue Festival at Camp North End in Charlotte. And, I just kind of wonder, between running a couple of businesses, the catering, the restaurant, there's a food truck, how much time do you spend on the road participating in festivals and competitions and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we as soon as the restaurant opened, we quit doing competitions
Okay.
completely. You will see me at like Euphoria doing like pimento cheese competition, Brunswick stew. Like if I'm there or if it's a fundraiser, we'll do that.
Hmm.
Um, we have, as my children have gotten older, and with our schedule, um, with our catering business. I don't travel as much as you would think.
Hmm.
I really, I'm very much a homebody. I like to stay. Um, I need to be within 2 hours to 3 hours of Eastern North Carolina, like of Sampson County. I mean, I
Yeah.
really do. Um, we used to do a lot of things, and now I kind of pick and choose. We really do, and I'm always blessed, and it's always extremely hard for me to someone calls me, Birmingham or, somewhere like that. And for me to say no, but, um, with our business, I'm a very hands-on owner.
Hmm.
So, and I also feel like if you're trusting me to do the most special day in your daughter's life
Hmm.
when she gets married, that I need to be present. And there are sometimes I'm not at every wedding. I can't physically do that. Um, but if it's very integral, and there's some hard things that are going to happen, I'm present. I'm not, and it's weird. 9.5 years, I still hadn't gotten to that point where I'm not always at a wedding. And we have really been focusing, Rodolfo and I. Rodolfo has been with me for 8 years, and he's just had a little girl that's a year old now. Um, and he and I have really started discussing more and more about work-life balance, about
Mm.
how, hey, you know what? There's a Saturday night where you cook all the food, and get us on the road, and you go home, man. I mean, I've got a senior in high school and a seventh grader and a sixth grader. Like time flies,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to make sure that we are creating, especially the crazy thing is there's really only three of us that cook, that
Hmm.
work in the kitchen is Rodolfo, Cray, and myself. And they call it, like my family calls us, three amigos or three stooges some of the time. Uh, but we've really started focusing on, like, okay, you need to take this afternoon off. Like, you got to go be present in her life. And they're affording me now where they'll look at me and say, we'll be at a wedding, and I'll get through apps where everything's got to be plated and get everything gone. And they'll say, you need to go home.
Mm.
Like, go home and see the kids. And um, so it's tricky, but and I would love to be able to go everywhere. Like I love meeting new people. I
Hmm.
love barbecue. I mean, I love everything, but I got to be daddy, and I've got to be a husband, and that's one of the things. We're so lucky that we're in the situation that we are, where I can look at the month of July and say, "Hey, we're going to kind of chill out working every weekend." That y'all need some time off. I need some time off. Um, and really, and I think you're seeing that a lot more in the restaurant business, not just barbecue.
Yeah.
Because this is hard. Like restaurant business is hard, but barbecue is even harder. Like it is, it really just takes a toll on you physically and mentally, especially, the way we work. I mean, we may be only be open a couple of days a week, but we'll work 50 hours in 3 days,
Hmm.
so I mean, we grind, we grind, but then we have Sunday and Monday off, and you kind of get back after.
Yeah. Well, it's important to take a break, get some time away to really help fuel that passion. And when you do get back to work, and we're having a great conversation here with Matthew Register from Southern Smoke Barbecue of Garland. We got a couple other things we want to try to get through, so we'll wrap it up. But before we do that, I want to talk about your recipe. And you shared a recipe for collard green chowder. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, like a good son of the South, I eat collard greens and I've made them and I tolerate them. And I have a hard time saying I like them, but I'll eat them. Tell me about collard green chowder, and this doesn't look like the typical collard greens that I would
Yeah,
find at my grandma's.
um, it's so funny. That is another like the squash and rice pudding that I
Mhm,
was talking to you about earlier. Um, we cook a lot of collards for catering
mhm.
and for the restaurant, and I found myself dumping a lot of pot liquor out, and just was like, there's got to be something we can
Yeah.
do with this pot liquor. And I am a huge soup and stew person. Like,
Mhm,
and clam chowder is one of my favorite things in the world. Like,
mhm.
I will eat it. I'll go get the can, run to the Pig and Wiggly and get a can of clam chowder and eat it, for dinner.
Yeah.
And so one day I had a little bit of country ham left, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna dice it up and let's take this pot liquor and just kind of build it. And I made it in a really small, just a regular stock pot. And my dad was there and just kind of cooking through it. And I was like, hey, try this. Like it's really, really good.
Mhm.
And uh, he just like then we were like, hey, come in here and try this. Come here and try this. And
Yeah, yeah.
the restaurant was open that day. And I just started taking little cups and giving it to people. And like,
Mhm.
hey, I want your honest opinion. Like, what do you think? And it just did. I mean, that's like, it's one of those dishes. And, Savor magazine named it one of the 100 best recipes in America. I still can't figure out that, like, I mean, and the funny thing is, the first time we made it, I didn't write anything down. I'm terrible for writing new recipes down.
You're a
So I had
cookbook
to try to,
author.
I know, but I'm terrible. Like, and I just finally, I cooked it a couple of times. So I was like, hey, I've got to like really get this nailed down because this could really blow up.
Mm,
But it is a also one of my favorite type of recipes. It is a quick weeknight meal recipe
okay.
because everything can be pre-cooked. All you got to do is get it back hot. So you got leftover collards, you dice up a little bit of ham, you got heavy cream, you got pot liquor, you get everything hot, throw some potatoes in there, and once your potatoes are done, you got dinner.
Yeah.
So I am you know, I got 3 kids that, play soccer and I coach and we're busy, but that's a perfect like Tuesday night meal when you only got 30 minutes to cook. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of recipes I also just love. But yeah, collard green chowder, it just kind of, and I have yet to find a restaurant that is doing it the way we're doing it. I'm sure there probably is somebody now, but a lot of times I've had collard green, not a chowder, but it's almost like a split pea soup.
Mhm.
Where it's really blended with heavy cream, but not like this. And man, we've cooked that thing. We've cooked collard chowder all over South Carolina and Virginia and everywhere. It's one of those things now where people are like, "Hey, if you come, can you make collard green chowder?" And I'm like,
Yeah, bring that
"Sure."
chowder.
Yeah,
Well, now
yeah,
folks will be able to make it at home. I've got the recipe. I'll share it on the blog. Appreciate you sharing that with us so folks can get a hold of that. And it's certainly a great story. And I know I'll look forward to trying it myself, probably around New Year's when we eat a lot of greens. For now, I want to
yes,
step
sir.
into barbecue 101 and try to kind of get some quick hits and wrap us up here. So, first of all, what is a tip or one of a kind practice that every barbecuer should try to follow when they're out doing their thing?
Well, one, I think there's two things. Mainly with barbecue, you need time.
Mm,
You need to take your time. Instead of rushing it, you need to slow it down. I always joke with people. don't ever, like, if you're cooking a Boston butt and you have guests coming over at 5 to eat, don't wait to pull your Boston butt off at 4 o'clock. Let's get it like where it may get done at 1, and we can stick it in a cooler and let it just kind of chill out. But you don't want to be, sitting there at 5 o'clock. Well, my port shoulder, or my butt stalled out on me, so it's going to be another 2 hours before we eat.
Fail.
But
Party fail.
also, yeah, that's a major. And all your party people are going to get drunk, probably drink all your beer,
Yeah.
and so you don't want that to happen. You don't want your wife mad at you, that kind of stuff. So, but also with barbecue, with long cooks, I'm a true believer in you need to find some good friends that are like storytellers that are interesting to spend time with, but that can control how much they drink. Because I have some dear friends that used to cook me all the time. Problem was at 3:30, 4 o'clock, they had gone to sleep because they had drank too much beer, and
Yeah.
I was sitting there by myself. So, but I do think barbecue is certainly a thing that is when it's with friends is so much more special. Like cooking a pig with buddies and cooking all night long. There's something special about that. There really is.
Yeah.
And there's not many foods that you can do that with, that you are going to smoke and cook for 10 to 12 hours, that you're going to be around a fire for that long. I mean, that's what makes it special.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about sauce. You got started in the sauce world. What do people need to know and think about when they're trying to make a sauce? What's it take to make a good sauce, you feel like?
So, one, again, you need to take your time, especially with cooking temperatures, because some of the mistakes I made early were getting it too hot. You got a lot of brown sugar in there, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to burn. So really, and I struggle with this because I'm very impatient. I'm a restaurant chef. Like, I cook on high. Everything I cook on high, and I have to really, even now, I have to really pace myself. But I always tell people, what do you want out of a barbecue sauce? Do you want it to be a little bit spicy? Do you want a little bit more molasses in it? Don't go online and say, oh, okay, this is the one that I'm going to use. Well, you may not like it. It may not be exactly. I have noticed myself now, I'm putting more and more black pepper in stuff. And part of that is the making sausage. We've started adding a little bit more ground pepper to our ribs. So my palate is changing a little bit. So, but take your time and really just kind of tweak it to what you want. And it shouldn't matter east, west. Do you want a sweet sauce? Do you want a mustard sauce? Really kind of bounce around and try a lot and figure out, hey, this is the one that we really like. Our sausage, we serve a mustard sauce that's almost like a honey mustard, that I really tried because I wanted the salty and kind of meaty beefiness of sausage. I wanted a sweeter kind of tart, and I don't mind giving this tip. I really, really tried hard to get a perfect honey mustard type sauce with a lot of like black pepper in it. And what I realized was, instead of putting a lot of mustard, I needed to put a lot of mayonnaise and then add the mustard, because the saltiness balances out the tartness. So it's just, you play around with it.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, we're going to take it into the low and slow barbecue showdown, and I shared some of these questions with you before, and you've been through this on our first visit, but I've got some curveballs for you, so get ready.
Okay.
And some of these you've already talked a little bit about, but in terms of the barbecue industry at large, are competitions good or bad for barbecue industry?
I don't think they're bad. I really don't. I think they're two totally different animals. I have friends that have done competitions. They love it. I think anything that exposes people to let's cook with wood, let's cook slow. I don't think that's a bad thing at
Mm.
all. You know, um, I do sometimes it scares me a little bit. We don't need to turn North Carolina barbecue into what the KCBS says barbecue is,
Mm-hmm,
if that
mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking KCBS, but that's not Eastern North Carolina barbecue. I don't think I don't think it's a bad thing, but we don't need to start. Um, you're not going to walk in the skylight and see a tray of ribs that are glazed perfectly. And listen, I'm not a competition guy.
I don't want it.
Some of the stuff some of those guys, what they do, it's amazing. Like I'm like, dang man, how did you do that?
Yeah.
I just want to throw like a chicken quarter on and throw a rub on it and just cook it and like you know, that barbecued chicken like all over your face,
Yeah.
type thing.
Melt in your mouth. Okay, so moving
But
on. We're keeping it quick here.
yeah.
Quick hitters here. So, if you're getting your meat, do you want it from the commercial feedlot or farm raised?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's according to where the farm is. How about that? Can
Okay.
I, I have certain farmers that I really love, and but from a restaurant standpoint, price point, you
Yeah.
can't serve it at a price point. So, um, I I see the advantages in both, but
Mm,
in our restaurant, we have to be commercial. You know, especially in Garland selling a $5 barbecue sandwich.
yeah. Gas, pellets, charcoal, or wood?
Only wood,
What is your
only
favorite
wood.
wood and why?
So we cook on all white oak with a little bit of red mixed in. It's just got a mellow flavor to it. It's a really versatile wood. You can cook lots of things with it. Uh, and that's kind of one of the things we have a lot of oak wood where we are.
Mm,
So that's what we use.
perfect. The best state in these United States for barbecue.
It's North Carolina,
Okay, well
period.
then that answers the
Now
next
in
question.
Texas, hey, Texas is close now. I really will tell you, Texas is doing some stuff that's not just beef. But uh, you know, Texas is bigger than us, but I think pound for pound, like you throw all of us like on some kind of showdown, I think we could take Texas. Georgia scares me too because you got Griffin Buffkin and those guys at Southern Soul
Yeah.
and home or not for Fox Brothers, and then you got Charleston. I don't know. It would be an epic throwdown to see who would come out on top. But I
The
still think we would
the
eventually.
barbecue battle royal. So if you're going
Yeah.
North Carolina versus South Carolina, then automatically North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. But man, I'm right on the fence. I'm right on the fence.
Yeah.
There's some South Carolina barbecue that I love.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
you carry me to Hemingway, South Carolina, and eat at the OG Scott's. God Almighty, like
Yeah.
I love it.
Good stuff. So, and I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The best North Carolina style, Eastern or Western?
It's got to be Easter.
Why?
It's got to be Easter. Um, because that's what I grew up on, and that sounds crazy to say that. Barbecue, I think, is very food memory based,
Hmm.
and that's what I grew up on. You're not going to convince Nate Monk to come to Garland and say, "Oh yeah, now I give up."
Right.
Matt Register's got the best barbecue. I'm not going to walk into Lexington and say, "Okay, I give up." I think it's very an emotional thing, and I like I like Easter. It's just that's what I grew up on, and that's who I am.
Fair enough. Pork, beef, or chicken?
Uh pork, pork, pork.
Do you want to rub or is it naked?
Uh, Ribs, rub, pork butt, naked.
Sauce, better with or without?
Uh, with. very lightly with.
And do you want it sweet or spicy?
I'm more of a sweet guy. I'm not a spicy. The older I get, the old acid refluxes, things are starting to catch up with me now. So
I feel your pain.
I'm having to watch my spicy food intake, and unless I have a Zyrtec and a glass of milk around.
Yeah, well, I mean, sweet or spicy kind of leaves. Where does vinegar fall into that? So that's sour, and you probably prefer sour.
Yeah.
So this is it, and this is
it's
the big
more
one.
salty.
This is for all the money. Barbecue, is it a verb or noun?
It's a noun.
It is a noun, and that, my friends, is the lowdown from Matthew Register, the pitmaster and owner-operator of Southern Smoke Barbecue in Garland, North Carolina. Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show on the Mesh.tv network of podcasts. Visit us online at lowslowbbqshow.com. That's where you'll find Matt's recipe for collard green chowder and more details about his cookbook, his restaurant, and his catering business. Hey, while you're at lowslowbbqshow.com, look for our other podcasts. You'll find our other interviews with Carolina's best pitmasters, award-winning food journalist Hannah Raskin, backyard barbecue experts, and the barbecue fundraisers, plenty more, all there at lowslowbbqshow.com. And if you like what you hear on the Low and Slow Barbecue Show, please follow our show in your favorite podcast stream, give us a 5-star rating, and share it with your friends. Special thanks to my guest, Matthew Register. Thanks as well to our producer, Andrew Moose, and the whole team at the Mesh.tv network of podcasts. Most especially, thank you for listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. Remember, for the best barbecue and the best barbecue podcast, make it low and slow.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.